let's take it to a larger context of teams. So direct reports, teams that you're working with, how does your interaction there help your own productivity as well as create an environment of higher productivity for them?
Yeah, so we could do a whole digression on how to help your teams be productive, but let me at least talk about it in terms of how I think about tasks relating to people on my team. And that's that I have one-on-ones that sort of with everybody on my team on a regular basis, and I might have casual check-ins with a number of other people on an ad hoc basis. And so what I might do with a task, for instance, which is something, let's say, I want to talk to Zach someday about recording a episode on being organized. I might create a task on that. I might have created that 6 months ago, let's say, but there's no specific time frame that would need to get done. I would take in Asana or in Wunderlist or Todoist, I would take that task and I would tag it with Zach's name, with your name, and I would then put it in the later section. So it's not something I need to do today or this week. It's something that'll pop up from time to time in my later view when I review that to see if I should bump it up in urgency. But more importantly, I tag it with your name. And so then when I meet with you, whenever that might be, if we have a regular one-on-one, it might be as soon as a week. If we go months or a year, it'll be the next time we meet. What I'll do is I'll search for that tag in my Asana list, and that item will pop up, and I'll know that that's something that we can talk about. And so I have probably several hundred tasks that fall into that category. Importantly, some of those tasks might be tagged with several people. And so if it's, I don't know, time to administer OKRs across the organization because it's end of quarter. I might want to talk to HR about the process of getting it done through payroll. I might want to talk to finance about their particular OKRs, or I might want to talk to you about, as a Jedi master, of how best to do OKRs. And I might put 3 different names on that same tag because I need to talk to all of those different people, so that when I talk to you, I'll remove your tag. When I talk to finance, I'd remove that tag. And that helps me know that I can have all of these conversations serendipitously when I next meet up on a regular sync or on a one-on-one, without having the task be, I got to talk to Zach today, I got to talk to Katie today, I got to talk to Sabrina today, which is really hard to sequence like that. It just sort of moves the process forward in a case where it's not an urgent task, and it's not in my today view. Does that make sense?
Helps. Yeah. And as you think about delegating tasks, let's say something comes up, and because I imagine a lot of stuff that comes in your inbox, a lot of your tasks can be delegated.
Yep.
Do you have thoughts around that? And then kind of what's the check back in cycle? So how do you keep any breadcrumbs for yourself to know, I delegated these 25 things, when should I check in on them? Yeah,
so that's always a tough balance. And so I think there's 2 questions there, which is, one is when to delegate, and the other is how to sort of track it. So let's do the first one first. I think of when to delegate as you sort of have to evaluate. You can't just evaluate, can I do this faster than the other person, right? Because that's a recipe for never delegating anything. Delegation is generally an investment. Even if you're delegating booking your airline travel to somebody, the first time you do it, you have to give them your login or your frequent flyer number or your seating preference or your airline preference, or what time you like to fly or whatever, right? And so it would have probably faster to log into Kayak and do it yourself. But if you're going to do that a lot, if you have an assistant that helps you do that, if you're going to do that a lot, it's an investment in terms of teaching them something, so that later it saves you time. But I think that's the obvious part of delegating and deciding on the investment. But the other factor is, what does it do for the person that's on your team in terms of their learning, right? My booking travel, probably not a whole lot. That's probably not the most fun part of their job, right? But if you're helping them get into a new activity, they want to learn how to work with customers more, or they want to learn more about product, or they want to learn more about marketing or whatever, to delegate something within their area of interest is actually a professional development experience and is worth it from a employee development standpoint and should be considered in the decision on whether you delegate or not. So that's maybe some ideas on if to delegate. Then the question on when you delegate, what do you track? Well, in most to-do lists, Asana, Wunderlist, Todoist, you can assign the task to somebody. And that's a perfectly good way. I would have a conversation with the other person. Are they using the same tool as you? Does that work? Try a few out in test mode to make sure you sort of have the rhythm of it, and you can assign it to them. And then I think of it as in one of a couple of ways. One is there are tasks that you delegate that you want to know the result of, and there are tasks that you delegate that you don't need to know the result of. And maybe you don't need the result because it's not something that is sort of risen to the level of your radar, right? It's sort of, yeah, I hope that gets done, but if it doesn't, it doesn't. But it also depends on your trust in the person that you're delegating to. If they're the kind of person that always gets everything done and never drops a single ball, you're not going to feel as compelled to leave the breadcrumbs as you describe. But to me, the breadcrumbs, when necessary, and so both those things have to be true, right? You have to, or false, right? You have to maybe not be 100% sure that it's going to happen, and it has to rise to the level that you care about it. If those things are the case, then you create a task to check in with that person by the end of some period. So you want to be sure it's, they told you it's going to be done in a week, maybe give them 2 if you're okay with that, and set yourself a reminder to check in to see if it was done at that point.
And for those maybe on your team where you're trying to instill some of these techniques, and they just hate structure, they resent any form of organization like this, what are your recommendations?
Yeah, great question. From a management perspective, I strongly believe that everybody is different. I like to emphasize in this talk that organizational skills, again, I'll say it again, didn't come naturally to me, and it's not that it's me. People say to me all the time, I'll never be as organized as you, and to that I say, I would have said the same thing 10 years ago. But I do think it's important to recognize that not everybody is the same, and people, need to operate in their way. I think that if there's somebody that's on your team that works for you, let's say your CFO, that needs to get the financial results to the board on a quarterly basis, I think it's a reasonable expectation that they will get that done. And if they're not getting that done on a regular basis, it's okay to sit down and sort of say, what's up? From a management standpoint, this is a really important part of your function, and you're not getting it done. And so I'd really like to understand why. And bear with me as we sort of rebuild that trust, as I need a mechanism to sort of make sure. So I will ping you in some way, but I don't need you to use my tool. I don't need you to use Asana so I can assign things to you. I don't need you to, but I think a good, open, honest conversation about what works for them in terms of the tools they use and how they'd like to be communicated with allows you to be flexible and do it in a way that feels good.